You are listening to a Media Day edition of Inside the Hive on the All Hornets Podcast Network. One podcast feed with multiple shows, making sure we cover the Charlotte Hornets from every angle. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. The All Hornets Podcast is affiliated with the Fans First Sports Podcast Group. Today's show, we are power ranking our top 10 quotes from Hornets Media Day. We're joined by Chase, as always, and Skylar Callahan, site publishing manager for allhornets.com. Joining us for the first time since last year's Media Day, when he came on and did the same thing after spending too many hours at the Hornets Spectrum Center today. So, Chase, hello to you. Skylar, welcome back a year later.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Chase, how was your day? You were at Hornet. You were at Boston Media Day today, right?
I was. I had some work obligations at Media Day down in Boston. It was a grand old time, as I'm sure many of the listeners could imagine, with what went down on Sunday up in Boston in terms of the Drew Holiday trade. So it was a fun time. Quite a exciting vibe down there. But I'm excited to talk about Hornets Media Day too, because I was also very excited reading some of these quotes on my ride back from Boston today. Got me even more excited than I have been in the last couple of weeks for season to kick off here.
This is Media Day, I feel like, is the peak of the mountain for fan excitement, right? For hope, optimism. And then from here, it normally goes down when someone picks up an injury on day one of camp. Preseason game happens. Everyone's like, oh, the offense doesn't work. And then games start and everyone's just balloon gets deflated. So this is the peak right now. And we're going to ride the wave. Let's not be, negative Nancy's. Let's ride the wave.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Exactly. So we're going to be ranking, as I said, our top 10 quotes from the day, just things that stood out to us. Skylar, as the man who is there in the room, we're going to go to you first. What is your number one thing that stood out to you most today?
Oh man, that's tough to just narrow it to the first or the top one, but I would probably say maybe an overlooked one, and that's Terry Rozier. And he said something like that this is the most excited he's ever been putting on a Charlotte Hornets uniform. And to me, if I'm a fan, like, that gets me going, because this is a guy that's been through a lot. Obviously, he's been through the teams that have, made the play-in tournaments. He was there last year, kind of had to handle the back point guard duties, and then ended up having to play point guard a lot because of LaMelo being out. And, he's been very open about how he wants this team to take that next step. And he's had success in Boston before. And for him to show that kind of enthusiasm, I think just kind of shows, like, especially from a veteran guy. If it's a younger guy like, LaMelo, I'd get it. But a guy that's been around, I mean, you don't really get that type of enthusiasm all that much. So I would say that one from Terry Rozier. And also the fact, this kind of goes with it, Steve Clifford pointed out too that he called Terry earlier in like August or something like that and was asking him, hey, we're going to need you to be back here and stuff for training camp and get you back and working out even maybe a little bit before. And he goes, don't even worry about it. I'm going to be there a month early. That just that blew my mind that he was there that early. And he was not the only one. He was actually just one of the first ones, and he started getting some of these other guys to come back in town earlier as well.
Chase is our Terry Rozier, a big Terry Rozier fan. It's got to be music to your ears, right?
It absolutely is. And I mean, Skylar and I are on almost the exact same wavelength here with our favorite quote to come out of Media Day, because mine was the one of Terry Rozier saying that he thinks this is also the most talented Hornets team that he has ever been on. And James, this is something that you've brought up a couple times on our recent podcasts. Like, this might be one of the most talented Hornets teams just generally.
He wasn't the only one to say it. It was a common theme today, right? I think Clifford said it. I feel like it was said a couple of times, right? It was
Gordon
said by multiple. Gordon said it as well. Definitely something that came out today.
And and exactly what Skylar said again. Like, if you're a fan, that type of stuff's got to fire you up. Like, from these veterans, like Terry Rozier knows what a good team is. Gordon Hayward knows what a good team looks like. He knows what a group of 7, 8, 9 talented guys in the NBA and what that takes off the court to get to that point. And they all think that they have that in this locker room in Charlotte right now. And this is something JT also said. Everybody's counting them out right now, but the veterans have bought in completely. All the young guys seem to be like following their lead, and every guy kind of has mentioned like another veteran player that they've kind of gone under their wing so far, and like it really seems like they're trying to hit the ground running here in this preseason. And Terry Rozier, I think, had a couple of really nice gems from this media day press conference today.
I do want to say one thing about Terry Rozier was back early. I do kind of feel like every year we have this discussion where everyone's back earlier than ever before. And every year there's people who go, yeah, I've just never seen it before. I've just never seen it. And I feel like we do this little thing every year and everyone gets so pumped. They're like, yeah. And it's like, didn't we do this just a few years ago? Remember everyone went down to Miami and worked out and all that? No one's ever done this before. We're the only ones doing this. And yeah, so I'm excited. It's great to hear. Like, part of me, I wrote in my notes is, why doesn't this happen every year? Did the team just like mail it in last offseason because they knew things were going to go bad from the Bridges suspension and everything else? Yeah, that was just one thing that I was like, I swear we kind of get excited about the same thing every year, and players and coaches seem to say it. But I think maybe this year is the one. This is actually the one, right? Now we can really get excited. Before it wasn't real. This is the one.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, just the enthusiasm from the veterans alone has got to be enough to fire people up. But, I mean, obviously you hear, the stuff from like even guys like Miles. I mean, just the confidence that he has in this group. And he wasn't around this team last year. And that's going to go and lead me to my second quote here. And that is Miles, because I asked Miles, what's the biggest difference playing for JB versus playing for Steve Clifford? And he said the main thing is structure. And some people may take that.
That's a good question.
Some people may take that like he's trying to take a stab at JB, but I literally asked the question himself. It's not like he brought it up.
Yeah.
But I think it's more so it's more organized. Everyone knows what they're doing. They're all on the same page. Like you said, who's taking the shot, where someone's supposed to be on any given play. And there's not that confusion out there on the floor. Everything's clear. There's a lot of clarity. So, I mean, that could change, obviously. He hasn't played a single game under Cliff, but as of right now, that at least gives you some confidence that he's going to be able to come right back in and pick up where he left off.
Yeah, I definitely think Cliff as a coach has a little bit more structure than Borrego, who was more, if you get an open shot, take it, whereas Clifford would be like, no, that's not your shot. In this possession, we want to try and get, that's our fifth option. Our first, second, third, fourth option are over here.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a huge advantage for such a young roster, too, which I think plays into probably what Miles was talking about a little bit. Like, JB had similarly young rosters, but definitely did not have the type of, detail-oriented approach to both ends of the floor, really, but especially defense. I think that saw Cliff be able to rein this in and turn a very similar roster into just a wildly different product on that end of the floor.
And I do, when they use the phrase the most talented team, I do notice they sometimes stop short of saying it's the best team, right? Because talent is something that a lot of young players have. And with talent doesn't always come production or winning basketball. So I'm waiting to hear that quote say this is the best team I've ever been on Charlotte. That's when I think you can really begin to get excited. And it's only a subtle thing, but I think there is a difference there.
And to go off of that, I don't know if it was Terry or Miles. I think it may have been Terry that said that it was by far the most talented team that he's played with in Charlotte. By far.
My biggest quote for the day was one of the questions that everyone always wants to know after coming back from the offseason. Who are the offseason MVPs? Who are the workout warriors? Who are the guys who stood out most in the scrimmages and workouts? And Steve Clifford answered this. It might have been even you who asked it, Skylar? Yeah. He answered it, and you could tell that he knew that everyone wants the answer of like JT Thor or Mark Williams. And he was like, I'm just going to have to say it. It was Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier, who are like the two most experienced veterans on the team, who aren't necessarily young, aren't necessarily up and coming, but he was like, they've been the best players, like in all the scrimmages. They've been the leaders. They've set the tone. And I think that's really reassuring. And he talked a little bit about the year they were really good when they made the playoffs and took Miami to 7 games. The reason that was because experienced veteran guys took great jumps. Al Jefferson had his best season of his career, already in his 30s at that point.
Yeah.
So if we can expect to see big years from Terry Rozier, from Gordon Hayward, you add on the development that you expect just to get from having younger players. I think that's really exciting, but they weren't necessarily the names that I think I was expecting. Maybe a lot of people were expecting to hear come from Steve Clifford.
Yeah, I think you would probably expected it to be like you said, like maybe a JT Thor, who Steve Clifford has a major soft spot for.
Yeah.
Like he has talked about JT Thor so much, and he even last year, I remember in some post games, questions weren't even about JT Thor, and he would find a way to bring up JT Thor in a conversation. But but I mean, in some ways, it is a good thing because like you want those guys that have been here and have been in the game for a long time, you want them to continue to progress because. I mean, let's face it, Gordon Hayward's had a lot of injury issues over the last few years. And I think a lot of people, even myself included, starting to think last year, he's starting to decline a little bit because last year really wasn't like his best year, I don't think. I think he left a lot out there. So I think hearing that, it shows that there's still some gas left in the tank for both those guys.
Chase, do you want to hit us with your next quote that stood out to you here?
So if we can knock out the off-season improvements here once. JT, his media appearance, I thought was very, I guess, eye-opening would be a good word for it. He first of all, he probably won the award comfortably for player that looks the most jacked from the spring to now.
Well, Skylar, you were in the room. Enormous. You tell us, Skylar, you were there. Who were your muscle
the picture that I think it was you, Skylar, that tweeted of him. I was like, that guy looks a lot different than he did in April.
JT definitely looks bigger than he did because last year you just looked like a skinny rail, and really the last 2 years. But honestly, like Mark Williams, man, like he just is massive. And we were joking after he left, and I think it may have been Rob that said, he may have looked taller, or maybe it was Steve Reed. And I was like, I think he actually did grow. No, it was Gordon Hayward that actually said that.
Yeah,
because we asked Gordon if he thinks Mark got bigger. He's like, I actually think he grew, and it honestly kind of does. I mean, he got up on that little stage area that they have, and his hair. Yes, he's got it flared out now, but I mean, his head would have almost touched the ceiling alone, and it was just incredible. But yeah, JT looks definitely a lot bigger. So I'm interested to see how that helps him in terms of playing in the paint, rim decisions, finishing at the rim, and not just being a guy that shoots jump shots.
If JT Thor can put on enough weight with his size and his length and the current question marks around Kai Jones, I do wonder if there is like an injury to Mark or Nick and they have to lean on someone as an emergency five, it could be PJ Washington. Could it also be JT Thor, right? You talk about Steve Clifford, who talks about how he raves about JT. He works so hard. He studies so hard. Like probably didn't have the strength last year to do it. But if he is playing bigger and stronger now and he knows the game plan, he has the versatility defensively. He's a lot bigger and longer than PJ Washington. Maybe JT Thor is a sleeper small ball center, which was always something that you thought could maybe be a selling point in the draft a few years down the line.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was said by Cliff or if it was said by just us in the media while we were waiting, but I think it did actually get brought up at some point. So I do think JT's got the ability to, and you also have PJ. I mean, with him being able to play the 5, you can play JT at the 4. I mean, they have so many different ways that they can move that front court around. But I want to say the one thing that really caught my attention with Cliff was that he was very aware of kind of like the situation he's entering this year without really saying it. And somebody had asked, again, I think it was Steve Reed, that asked about the pressure going into this year, if it felt like a make or break year for him. And he kind of thought about it for a second. He's like, I understand it. He's like, you could say that. And we all know what the situation is. Like, he's on a short-term deal. The team was awful last year, but obviously a lot of it had to do with injuries. But you have new ownership, and first impressions mean everything. And if you don't make a first impression in year one, they're probably going to want to go out and get their own guy. So for him to show that awareness means something. And he said something of to the effect of like, I want to be the best coach for these guys now and best coach for these guys this year. And that's the mentality he has to try to have every single season, not worry about what's going to happen next year or 2 years down the road.
Yeah. Next quote I'm going to go for. It's actually a selection of quotes. It's one from Brandon Miller, one from Bryce McGowan's, and there was also one from Steve Clifford. There seemed to be a narrative emerged today that maybe we haven't heard much before. In the past, it's always been Gordon Hayward. He leads by example, right? You never hear much about Gordon Hayward, the veteran mentor. But there was a few things today that just came through, which we've not heard much before. So firstly, Bryce McGowan's talked about how he worked out a lot with Gordon Hayward this offseason, did a lot of morning workouts, and how he's really been someone that he's leaned on for advice now that Kelly Oubre has moved on. So that I thought that was, worth taking note of. You had Brandon Miller, who said that Gordon basically tells all the young guys, forces them to get on like the physio bed basically every single morning, which again is just building those right habits into the young rookies. And you got Steve Clifford, who again talked about the standard that he was setting in his summer workouts, him coming back early, him having a great summer. So just those selection of things. Everyone's criticized probably this team for not having a lot of leadership. We have, and I still don't think they have enough. But I do wonder if maybe something has changed a little bit this offseason where Gordon Hayward has looked around and gone, yeah, maybe I do need to be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more proactive with this team. And maybe that's a change that we're going to see this year. Maybe not something he's used to, but something I think this team sorely needs.
I think a big part of that too, and this is something Steve Clifford also mentioned, he had a fully healthy summer. He was not rehabbing an injury. He wasn't off in LA going to doctor's appointments every couple months to get his ankle looked at after it was fractured or whatever it may have been in the last couple of years. He was just in Charlotte working out, clearly with Bryce McGowan's very often also, like pretty much every day. He would post on his Instagram of himself at, I think it's Charlotte Catholic High School, the like CC logo in the middle of the court. I'm sure anybody that's been there would be able to recognize it immediately if they saw him post that. He was there like all the time. They like working out, gym by himself, taking shots, just probably, I'm sure he invited many other young players there with him as well. He's definitely not a vocal guy, and he probably is never really going to be, especially on the court, is never going to be somebody that's like yelling at his teammates, like screaming at them, directing them after mistakes, or like just beating his chest when someone makes a highlight play or something like that. But I feel like he's definitely the type of guy off the court, especially to, try and steer guys in the right direction. Cause he's always been, that type of guy off the court. He's never been somebody that's known to not have like a good work ethic or as a poor presence in the locker room or something like that. So I feel like that kind of thing just shows up in different ways. And I definitely feel like he has taken a step forward vocally, like so far this summer, but maybe in years past, it's just been harder to notice because it wasn't like a vocal thing. It was like a lead by example, like you said, James.
Do you think Gordon sent a group text to everybody saying, hey, I'm working out here. Do they want to join? And then Bryce McGowan's was the only one who turned up?
In their 22-person group chat. Yeah. He got one thumbs up from Bryce McGowan's, no replies.
Okay. Skylar, I'm coming back to you. What was your next thing that jumped out for you?
So I guess not necessarily injuries, but since we're kind of on the topic of it, I would say LaMelo committing to wearing braces this year.
Yes.
On both of his ankles. That's going to be interesting. I mean, you don't think it's really that big of a deal, but until you go out there and play in it in the actual game, it's going to be a little different for him. I think there's going to be a little adjustment period. So I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out and is a little rusty. I'm not saying he's going to stink it up or anything, but like it's probably going to take him a few weeks, maybe a month before he really kind of gets back to where we all expect him to be. But that's something different. I think Miles pointed out how, Kemba back when he was in Charlotte, he would be wearing the braces and the knee pads. And I mean, he was all padded up. But it's just a part of taking care of your body and remaining healthy. And as far as the shoes go, I know some people are sneakerheads out there. He is not changing the cut of his shoe. So he's going to stay. He said he wears like a mid to high shoe, not a low cut. It's going to be like a mid to high, and he's going to kind of stay in that range. So we'll see if it pays off.
For the tennis fans out there, Andy Murray, great British tennis player. We're not claiming him to be English. He is Scottish, but we're claiming British. Had a lot of ankle problems early in his career. Had double ankle braces on, and these aren't just like a tuba grip sock. We're talking like they have plastic plates on each side of the ankle that lock your ankle in place, which is I've worn them. Yeah, I've worn them before playing basketball myself because I have a dodgy right ankle, and it does feel weird. It makes your foot feel like fat and clunky, but it doesn't stop you from doing anything. And that completely changed Andy Murray's career. He basically wore them every single game. And I do think those are the type of braces that I actually do think have impact from you being able to sprain the ankles. So I think it's a sensible move, and it shows that he's willing to work with the medical staff. I think he said it was the team I think he referred to, which is probably the Hornets medical team, were kind of suggested and asked him to do that, and he's going to try it and do it. So that's good to see that he's kind of adapting and learning and trusting the medical staff as well. Chase, I'm coming to you. What's next?
You know what? We'll go back to JT Thor. I actually thought it was really interesting that he mentioned that Cody Martin is somebody that he views as a veteran leader. And this is I think it says more about where Cody's at in his career and kind of how the lost season may have impacted that. He's just a year older. He's 28 now. I think he is already turned 28. He's one of the oldest players on the team. Other than Gordon and Terry, there's nobody older than Cody Martin. So it makes sense that players would kind of look up to him in that way. And I just think that if he can come back and be healthy and just be a rotation player, he doesn't have to be the team's sixth man or something like that. Just be somebody that can be counted on for steady minutes load every night. He's really going to cement himself as a leader on this team, because his play style is probably the most conducive to what people view as leadership qualities, playing hard, showing effort, toughness, hard-nosed defense, commitment to the little things and details. Nobody on the team really embodies that more than Cody Martin. So I think that would be really, really cool to see him come back and be healthy and be able to do all those things with this being basically 2 years older than he was the last time he was a real part of this team, on a day in, day out basis. So I'm really hoping that we can see that come to fruition this year.
And the thing that stood out to me was Steve Clifford said, and he said this last training camp, and he said again, that Cody Martin, he used the exact phrase as he's a huge piece of what we're doing. And he said the same thing last offseason. And everyone joked when Cliff got hired that Cody Martin is the most Cliff player, and but James Bouknight was never going to get minutes because Cody Martin was going to play 48 minutes. And he's not been healthy enough to know if that was going to be true. But the way he talks about Cody Martin a year on, he's still a big part of his plans. He is not an afterthought, which by now you could be thinking well, is he ever going to be healthy? Have we got some other players we could look at with your Bryce McGowans? But absolutely, it seems that Cody Martin, Steve Clifford seems as keen to get Cody Martin on the floor as anybody, really. He talked about how there's just not many players like him in the NBA anymore. Unselfish, do everything for your teammates. So, yeah, I think in Steve Clifford's vision as well, I still feel Cody Martin has a really big role on this team if he can reach the levels that he reached 2 years ago.
And I actually was one of the last 2 or 3 people. There's only 2 people in the media room left when Leaky Black got to talk. But I did talk to him a little bit about kind of being that glue guy, not being a stat freak or anything like that. And I tell you what, the more I go back and think about how Leaky played at Carolina, I think there's a chance that he could maybe make this team down the road and be kind of that Cody Martin if he sticks to that commitment on the defensive end. If he sits down there in Greensboro for a couple of years and develops and does enough, he may get a shot. And Steve Clifford, if he's still here, he's going to love that effort on the defensive end. So I'm not saying he's going to get there this year, but I think there's a chance at some point Leaky will get his chance in the NBA. Last thing before I got to go, Mark Williams. I saw James text me this, and he was like, you got to ask Mark about his 3-point shot. And I knew it's exactly what I wanted to ask him too. And he seems confident in it. He said that basically if he gets the ball in rhythm and catches it in rhythm, it's going up. So that could really help stretch the floor, open things up. And sometimes we see it in the NBA when you have a center that just kind of clogs up the lane. It kind of takes away from what your point guard can really do in terms of cutting and getting into the basket. But if Mark's out on the 3 and he can hit those consistently, I mean, all of a sudden LaMelo's just got an extra 8 points a game. it's going to open up so much more for not only Melo, but all the other guys on the roster.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If Mark Williams can stretch the floor, I'm interested to see if, he said if I catch him rhythm, I'm putting it up. Now, we've heard this before from Hornet centers. We heard it from Cody Zeller. It happened in preseason. It then never really materialized in the NBA season. We heard it a little bit from Al Jefferson in his last season in Charlotte. It never really materialized. Both under Steve Clifford. I think that'll be an interesting dynamic to see. And if Steve Clifford really is letting him shoot, then rest assured that he is very confident, because Steve Clifford is probably one of the stricter players in terms of limiting players what they're going to do. So I think it's a great point. Skylar, I knew you have to jump off to do another podcast.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for giving us some of your time. And well done today, Media Day. I'm sure Leaky Black will remember that you were there for him at the end. You can get all the exclusives later this year now.
Right.
You and Leaky were just there at the end by yourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on. If you're on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it, Callahan _ I'll be at Hornets training camp throughout the week. So I'll try to get some quotes, some videos of guys shooting around, and you can check all that stuff out there. So thanks, guys, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Thanks, Tyler. Have a good one, man.
Later, y'all.
Okay, me and you. I've not designed a two-person overlay for this part of the podcast, so we're just going to recycle an old used one. Okay.
We're just going to say it looks right, but then now I realize that it's
this is
from a couple weeks ago.
But for the podcast listeners, you're thinking, what's going on? We don't even mind. Let's get on with our talking. So we're going to do that. I don't actually know how we've got this far without mentioning this next one, Chase. Brandon Miller. I'm anointing Brandon Miller the gold medal, the winner of Media Day. I think every single coach, well, there was only one coach, every single player who came through, head coach Steve Clifford, everybody was raving about Brandon Miller. Not just one thing, talking about his unselfishness, his high basketball IQ, his size, his ability to play off the ball, without the ball, how he's a quick learner, all these things these are all the things that normally rookies have to adapt to. How do you play when you don't have the ball in the hands? How do you adapt to new defensive schemes? How do you get up to pace? All those things that normally players and coaches kind of like protect rookies by saying, well, it takes some time. There's a lot of change from college to pro. You can tell that he's raising eyebrows just with the way I don't remember a rookie being talked about in this way since LaMelo Ball. And I remember James Borrego said, you're going to see he's going to raise some eyebrows. Like he said that quote and you went, oh, hold on. Like he's egging it on rather than like trying to protect the guy. And that's when they've got supreme confidence. So yeah, I'm saying Brandon Miller is the winner of Media Day. There was just so many quotes from so many vets who were just clearly highly impressed with Brandon Miller.
Well, Brandon Miller, if you're listening, your trophy is in the mail for winning Media Day. It will be here very soon. But I mean, like, I just think like, and everybody that listens to this knows, you heard my reaction when we live streamed the draft and the number 2 pick came on the board. It was not overwhelmingly positive, but at this point, man, if I'm rooting for that guy to completely flip the script, because it's not even just like Hornets fans, it's like the entire NBA universe.
The Hornets are a joke. They're a laughing stock.
Yeah, it's like
the whole NBA.
Yeah, it's like this guy is not going to be better. Whoa, this guy is not going to be better than Scoot Henderson, who went 3. This was wrong. The signed, sealed, delivered on June 22nd, 2023. It's already over.
Scoot Henderson just tried to call you to disagree right there.
Yes, he's already on my phone. I got him right here, and I'm ignoring it for the sake of the podcast. So, listeners, this is what it takes to make it to the big leagues. But
yeah,
if he can just come in, and we're in October, and everybody around him is like, no, like this guy's the real deal. Like this is everything that everything that the Hornets were saying about him probably in their draft room when they picked him. That's real. What the NBA world and fans and media out there are saying, like, trust us, you will see otherwise very soon. I mean, I'm rooting very strongly for him to do that because it's unfortunate when players get like trapped in these narratives, like as rookies, like Mark Williams. immediately just got compared to Jalen Duren his whole rookie year. It was not his fault. It's just something that fans and media disagreed with. And at the end of the year, it turns out at worst they're equal. And maybe in some people's eyes, Mark is better. We just have to wait for Brandon Miller to do the same. And I think it's going to end up pretty positively in his and the Hornets' favor.
Some of the notes on Brandon Miller. He revealed that he is up to 210 pounds, which is his target weight for the offseason. He was listed at 200 last year at Alabama, and apparently he lost 10, 15 pounds with mono after the season. So you have to imagine he was maybe sub 200 in that 190 range. So that means that since March, he is probably put on somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 pounds, which is good to see because I think Summer League, he did look skinny. He's never going to be probably a massive, strong guy. He doesn't have a Kawhi build, but he does need to put on strength. So I think that was a positive sign to see. There was one other point I was going to make on Brandon Miller, but I can't remember it. But he seemed pretty relaxed about everything. This was it. Steve Clifford said he was like, he always dismissed the question. He was like, he's going to be on the floor right away. He was not even like, it's like, you can't, when you've seen the way he said it, sounded like when you've seen what I've seen, you would be bonkers not to play Brandon Miller from the start, from day one. That's how he said it, like the tone that he sent. Which again, there's people going like, is Brandon Miller going to start? Is he going to be playing? And I was thinking, well, maybe if he comes off the bench behind Gordon Hayward, who we know has done well, Terry Rozier, like maybe he's going to be playing 14, 15 minutes a night. After today, I think he's going to be up in that 20 to 25 minute range from early in the season, just from the way that everyone is speaking about him. I know there's only so many minutes to go around. And maybe on those particular like second nights of back-to-backs, maybe they rest Hayward and they give Brandon Miller a start. But I'm more optimistic about his role and his playing time after today, because if there was any doubt, Steve Clifford would be the first one to try and manage expectations.
Speaking of Steve Clifford, one of my other favorite quotes from Media Day today is something Sam Purley tweeted out, Hornets.com writer. Shout out to Sam for his coverage of Media Day as well. He's been there for many years now, always does a great job.
Friend of the podcast.
Wonderful friend of the podcast, recurring guest of the podcast.
Yep.
But he mentioned that oh God, I completely just lost my train of thought. Oh boy. I got to get it pulled up now. I'm scrambling. My brain is just like short circuiting right now.
Well, I'm going to come in with the tape while you are looking for that. Because I had another one queued up ready to go. James Bouknight, maybe one of the forgotten men of this upcoming season. But this was one I was wanting to speak to Skylar about actually before we went. His interview I felt very different from any of the James Bouknight interviews I've watched. He appeared very thoughtful, reflective. Maybe I say like a little bit more mature. You never know is it going to translate on the court? Who knows? But in the past, I always remember like after he was drafted, he was talking about Rookie of the Year and, it's going to be highlight television. And the guy who I saw speaking today, he talks a little bit about how he's worked on all the areas of his game, including his mental side as well, which again, I think it's not a secret now that Buck has struggled with some mental health or, feeling low at times. And he's maybe not dealt with that the best way. And what I saw going into year, was it going to be three now for James Bouknight, is just what I felt was maybe someone who has a better understanding of their situation and where they are. So I'm interested to see what this Bouknight season looks like. The Summer League was not promising. Let's be honest. We watched it. We talked about it. But today he, at least off the court, appeared to have maybe speak and appear and act a little bit more like an NBA player needs to.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a make or break season for him. Last year of his rookie contract.
It might be a make or break month because the option gets picked up at the end of this month for next season as well. Like if he is not good in training camp, if he is outplayed by Nick Smith Jr., Bryce McGowan's, Cody Martin, all the other guys, then they may not pick up his option next year. So it might not even be a make or break year. It might be a make or break month.
Yeah, and that's tough to do in training camp. Like like you just said, there are 3 guys ahead that could be ahead of him, very conceivably, at the end of this month. I mean, right now, all 3 of them might be ahead of him. So it's not an easy thing to do. And if you're going to be able to accomplish something like that, you definitely need to be in your best physical and mental shape. You got to be sharp to even come close to being able to put in the work and attention to detail that it takes to overcome that type of odds, which is unfortunate that he's in that situation. But obviously, you just got to play the hand that you're dealt at this point. I mean, he does seem like he's in a good place. So that is an improvement where he's been at times when he's mentioned it himself, like at multiple times, that when his on-court play hasn't gone well, it's not been something that he's handled well as a person, which I would imagine that everyone listening to this or in the world can relate to that at some point. But it's just on a grand stage and in an opportunity like the NBA, these chances fade very quickly. So we will definitely see, like you said, probably over the next month, like what James Bouknight's future is in Charlotte.
Yeah. Okay, let's circle back to your Steve Clifford point.
Yes, and I remembered it pretty much immediately after you started talking, which makes perfect sense. Yep. That as soon as my brain realized that it was not my turn to talk anymore, it was like, okay, now I got it. But I wanted to talk about how Steve Clifford mentioned the progress that they made last year and like the type of team that they were in terms of pace of play. He said that we made good progress last year when we had certain guys on the floor. Our team is made to run, and we ran last year. They're 7th in pace, but they were 27th in points per possession in transition play. So I think what he's kind of alluding to right there is we played fast. We just weren't in a position to, reap the benefits of it. Our team wasn't healthy enough for the entire year to have a large enough sample to where we could be a good team in transition. We were just a frequent transition team. This year, we're going to try and piece that together and, have the results look a lot more similar to what the process looks like here. And I think like Brandon Miller is going to be a huge part of that with his ability to play fast and space the floor, play multiple positions and shoot the ball. LaMelo, obviously, the biggest part of that. But this is something Skylar mentioned too with Mark Williams' 3-point shooting. I think like if he does add that to his game, that's another thing that's really going to help them be able to play fast, because then you don't have one guy on the court at all times that teams know they don't need to respect as like a trailing shooter in fast break situations. Like, what is one of the easiest and like most efficient ways that the Timberwolves get a 3 for Karl Towns? Running in fast break and having whoever has the ball just pitch it back to him as he steps perfectly in rhythm to like an above the break 3, which is a lot easier for a guy that's really tall and has long arms and doesn't need to push on his shots very much like Mark will. I think that's going to be something that is like, if that's a real development, that is like, it's basically like if like Robert Williams learned how to shoot, or like Rudy Gobert.
Yeah,
like, not to the same level of impact yet, but like that type of skill set, adding that 3-point shot, it's just a very, very rare thing for a player that's as good at the things he's good at defensively to also be able to stretch the floor.
And you've nailed it there. It's very rare. And that's why I want to pump the brakes a little bit. It's good that Mark said he's going to let it fly if he's in rhythm. But how many players go from not shooting threes in college at all, who are interior rim blockers, shot blockers, to like average NBA shooters from 3? Like Brook Lopez, that's one. I don't know if you can name many others. Maybe Al Horford, right? Could maybe be another guy. But these are much older guys who've had like 10 plus years to work on their craft in the NBA, and they've developed it over time. I want to pump the brakes a little bit, because I think if Mark Williams like took 3 threes a game and shot 29% this year, I think that would be like good progress. So I don't want people thinking here like, oh, if it can just be 35% on medium volume, it's like that's just, I don't think going to happen.
That would be I'm thinking like just basically the volume that Cody Zeller took them at when he was in Charlotte, which was like 1.5, I think, per game was what he peaked at, but just not shooting them at like 24%, maybe up that to like even 30%, just to make it so teams when you catch the ball beyond the arc, they can't just look at you and let you shoot. Like someone has
I think they will for at least the like first half of the season. One's going to be closing out. They're going to be like, "Are we worried about LaMelo Ball? We're going to let the 7'2" guy over there shoot a 3 who's like never proven it." So he's going to get wide open looks for
Yes.
like until he's shot like a month of 40%, they're going to leave him wide open. So I don't think, opposing defense isn't going to be the challenge here. I don't think, at least for the first bit. Just interesting, a quick fact check on your, not yours, Steve Clifford's figures about transition. Because when he said that, I was like, those some figures. I think you read them out. If you could just read them again. I think he said in frequency
They were 7th in pace and 27th in points per possession in transition.
So
but now that I say that and actually think about it instead of reading it, I think they were 9th in pace last year.
Well, so I'm looking on Cleaning the Glass here on frequency of transition. So this isn't necessarily pace, but it's frequency transition. They were 6th. But then when it comes to efficiency, I had them down. They were 24th, right? So maybe slightly better. So this is just, again, interesting here. The reason I bring this up, when you talk about stats of what a team isn't, like teams have slightly different ways of defining things, different to figures that are publicly available, like Cleaning the Glass filters out garbage time stats from blowouts. And also like just maybe what they exactly monitor and track are a little bit different. But I just thought that was interesting. Like they were maybe not quite as in transition quite as much as these stats suggest, but maybe a little bit better on Cleaning the Glass. So I just thought it was interesting to kind of compare the public stats to what Steve Clifford quoted, and they're similar, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, they might keep their own stats, honestly. The Hornets, like,
they probably will.
They might track it themselves in a completely different way. So he could all very easily just, mixing up the number 7 with 6 or 8 or not is very easy thing to do also. But it is definitely interesting. That would be like, if we were in the room with him immediately and we had just gotten that answer, that would be a very interesting follow-up, is to be like, is that like per the NBA stats, or do you guys track that, or whatever it may be, because that could lead to a whole web of different questions that you could ask him too. So, but I do think that he is just generally much more equipped to play the style that he tried to play last year, but actually see much better progress or results from it. And that was something people hated on him too before, when he took the job. It was like, oh my God, they have LaMelo and he's going to make him play like so slow and not be himself and not let him like freewheel and be this like creative playmaker that he is. He wasn't very healthy last year, but in the minutes that he was, that was not the case at all. He was very much letting him run, make the same type of like ridiculous passes that only he can make, that he was making when Borrego was the coach too. And now the team was just a much more sound, structured defense and offense. So I'm very excited to see that this year with a fully healthy lineup for most of the season.
Absolutely. Okay, we're coming to the end here. Any last things, I guess, from today that you wanted to touch on? Anything from a Mr. Beast new sponsorships? I don't know if you saw Kelly Oubre's comments, or anything else from the team, really.
So the Mr. Beast thing, as someone who, I knew who Mr. Beast was and that he was like a YouTuber and like really famous and gets like millions of views on his videos and stuff. But that jersey patch being my introduction to the fact that he has like a chocolate bar, like candy bar line, was just it was just crazy learning all of this at once, and then also realizing that it's the Hornets jersey patch. But I cannot think of, like, from a sports business perspective, of a smarter jersey patch thing. Like, they basically just drew in the amount of subscribers that Mr. Beast has, which I'm sure is like millions upon millions of people, and like gave them a route to being a Hornets fan, which obviously you have to like basketball and all that stuff. It takes a lot to fully get into it, but like, how many other teams have that type of market or demographic to market to, and that many people to pull from that may have not been interested in their team before, but they certainly might now. And we always talk about this, the cool merchandise and like the logos and the color schemes for the Hornets, that doesn't hurt either. So they're really like doing a very good job with like the off the court branding stuff, and just be like raising the presence of themselves, like not just in the city, but just general as like a national brand for a professional North American sports team. I think is very cool to see them do these kinds of things. And also the logo looks really cool and is like the same color as the teal almost. So good move all around, I think.
Yeah, it's different, right? And I think that's probably something the new ownership group wanted to bring in, something, fresh, up and coming. you can imagine it was something that they were wanting to look at. It might have been in the works maybe before new ownership group. Maybe we're giving too much credit, but there's more you can do with it, right? There's loads of stuff you can do off the back of it. Who knows if that's in the plans or if it's going to be a pretty transactional relationship. It just depends what the contract is for the sponsorship. But interesting addition. Yeah, I need to try some of these chocolate bars though. I'm pretty jealous now. Can you get them in stores like in America? Like, have you seen these around at all? I've never seen them over here, obviously.
I'm Googling it right now, but I have literally never seen these in my life. So it looks like you can buy them at like Target and Walmart. Oh, Shaw's. Okay, yeah. So you can that's a local grocery store up here. So yeah, it looks like you can just go to the grocery store.
This is my challenge for you.
Before
the next podcast, I want you to buy some, and I want you to try them live on the podcast. And I
will absolutely do that. That is our for 1 hour next Monday. We will try this chocolate
just
bar.
Cycling through flavors. Just cycling through all the 35 different flavors of candy bar. I love it.
That works. I love chocolate. That sounds like a plan to me. You don't have to twist my arm for that one at all. But it's also he's from North Carolina, Mr. Beast, which is cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, he's another
didn't know very
guy.
much about him at all, but it's cool that it's like a local guy that's doing this as well. So very, very cool. And I saw that on Twitter that you were worried when yesterday Hornets social media to tease this tweeted a picture of a chocolate bar with a Hornets logo on it. I saw you were worried that were going to have some brown jerseys, and I do share that worry with you a little bit.
Yeah,
but I thought about it. The brown and teal and purple and white, I think there could be something there if they wanted to make a Mr. Beast jersey instead of just the jersey patch.
Oh no, come on. I said my tweet was a little bit tongue in cheek, and also curious because I was curious.
Brown Oregon Blazers jersey.
Well, no, it was a genuine question. I couldn't think of any brown NBA jerseys in history that I knew of, right? So it was a little bit tongue in cheek because I didn't really think it was about. I didn't think they were going to go to brown jerseys. It's just not something an NBA team I didn't think would do, especially for a sponsorship reason. And why would they make it chocolate? But so it was a little tongue in cheek. But also I was just curious, like, were there brown jerseys in the NBA? And there were some that people posted. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought you were like just an extreme disapproval of the brown Portland Trailblazers jerseys that's just said Oregon across the front from like I think 2 or 3 years ago. Nope. That's what I thought it was in reference to.
I have no recollection. No,
okay,
I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
I only remembered it because I would see it when Damian Lillard was playing on League Pass late at night, which will not be happening anymore for the Portland Trailblazers. So if they ever have a brown jersey again, I probably won't see it either.
Yeah. A final thought, and we'll say here, we've only touched on a few things from Media Day. If you want to deep dive into this more, we have all the player and coach videos posted on allhornets.com. We have a live article which had quotes as and when they happened on the All Hornets website. If you want to hear about some of the comments that Kelly Oubre made regarding Charlotte, you can go find those on the website as well. My final thought is, with all the movement, the Jrue Holiday, Damian Lillard trades that have all happened, I want to say that I think the way the trades broke in the end, I think have broken pretty well for Charlotte. Like, there was a real situation where Damian Lillard was going to be in Miami or Jrue Holiday was going to be in Miami. And now Miami has lost Strus and Vincent. They've, a couple of their players got a little bit older. Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, not exactly young guys. And I just think it's interesting that it could have got a lot more difficult, their division, who you see more regularly, and it's not happened. And what happened is teams like Boston and Milwaukee, who were already going to be really good, have got even better. So I think it's a really bad thing for the likes of Philly, maybe Cleveland. But then for those teams who are maybe battling for that lower edge of the playoffs, I think it's a better thing because it's not spread the talent. It's kind of consolidated it. So that was just a passing thought on the final part of the podcast.
That was exactly my thinking too. And I think down the road, like, it kind of just puts the Hornets in a better position to make moves similar to that, because those like Boston, Milwaukee, like these teams that are making these moves right now are kind of locked out of them for the next couple of years. Like the Bucks aren't making a Damian Lillard trade for, superstar X next summer. That would be pretty inconceivable to do after all they've given up over the last couple of years for Drew Holiday and Dame now. Boston's obviously not doing it either because their core is locked in through this season and next season. And the other teams are kind of just in the mode of, shifting downwards, like Miami, Philly, Toronto. Like they might be tearing it down sooner than they're building it back up. And it does make it harder to break through at that like very top level of the conference and be a team that could like make the finals or something. But like in 3 years or even 2 years, it's not inconceivable that if everything breaks right for like the Hornets or other young teams, like even like the Magic or the Pistons, that they could become, go from the 10, 11, 12 playing range to like 3, 4, 5 very quickly, because all it's going to take is a couple of moves from these veteran teams that are in the play-in range now. Chicago, you could throw in that range as well, and they'll become the Hornets, Pistons, and Magic that are tanking, trying to get high lottery picks. And these teams will, even if it's through no fault of their own, and they're not even trying to get that much better that quickly, they're just naturally going to rise up. And it really, everything broke for the Hornets this summer, I think, apart from acquiring players that would make them better themselves. Like it definitely didn't hurt them where these guys landed up.
Yeah. All right, Chase. It's been a long day. It's been a long day for you in Boston. It's been a long day for me transcribing video and recording everything. Thank you for everybody who interacted on social media today. Thank you for those who read allhornets.com. Hopefully this has given you a nice taste into what's happening in Media Day. And look, training camp starts tomorrow. Steve Clifford said they're bringing in refs, scrimmaging from minute one. So there's going to be some live action play tomorrow. I think the Hornets do it a little bit differently from what Clifford said. They don't do drills. They like to scrimmage. They like to hit people from day one. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Skylar, make sure you're following Skylar on Twitter as well. It's at Callahan. He's going to be there at training camp all this week, giving you all the information that you want. So make sure you're following Skylar. Appreciate him jumping on here. Chase, appreciate you jumping on as well after a busy day for you. And we're due to speak next week when we'll have probably some more insight into how things are going at training camp. So we will speak next Monday, and we'll get a podcast in next Tuesday. Couple of things before we finish. We do have a new podcast schedule for this upcoming year. So it's going to be me and Chase going to be publishing Tuesday. We're going to have Hornets and Heartbreak publishing Thursday. And we're going to have Buzzer Boys, Buzzer Beaters even, which is Eric and Atticus, is going to be publishing on Saturday as well. So make sure you check out allhornets.com. Make sure you check out All Hornets Twitter, where you can find our schedule on there. And we're going to be bringing you scheduled podcasts pretty much every other day of the week. So you're going to be kept up to date all year. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And we will speak to you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Season is here. Let's do it.